Everyone, it has been a little while since I've done one of these recordings, and that is on purpose. As you can tell, I've added some new things, including this guy right here, brand new mic. I had to do a little bit of research on that. I had been getting some comments that the sound wasn't the best, and I appreciate those notes very much. This was something that I already knew, and I wanted to work towards getting a mic for this channel. I think it was perfect timing, to be honest. So I'm happy to be investing in this. Behind me, there is a new green screen, a physical fabric green screen, and hopefully I'll conquer that as time goes on. One of the things I'm learning very quickly is the importance of lighting for that green screen, as well as making sure you're taking care of any wrinkles or anything along those lines. So just bear with me. We're going to move step by step in this channel together. I really like the fact that it feels very grassroots anyway, because my fear is that film has become relatively unapproachable for a lot of people that feel like there's not a place in celebrating film for them, that it is simply for cinephiles and the Martin Scorseses of the world that meet at parties and drink expensive wine and talk about film, and that's not what this is. That's not what film is ever meant to be. And there will never be, and you will hear me say this over and over and over again on this channel, there will never be a definitive opinion about film. There will not. Film is art, and how it makes you feel is just as valid as how it might make someone else feel. So what I say is a good movie, a great movie, a decent movie, or a terrible movie on here, that's just one person's opinion. Hopefully I call some things out. Hopefully I can spread some facts about the movies that you might not have known. And hopefully I shine a light on films that you really enjoy too, and you just want to see someone else that enjoys that same movie. So, without further ado, this is a first watch review, and I got a good one for you this week. We're going to be talking about none other than the ghost with the most, and that is Beetlejuice. And the interesting part is I've already said his name once, and I'm going to have to say it at least 2 more times just to say the title, which is Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Okay, I think I'm good. So, without further ado, let's dive right in.
You're crazy to know who I am, aren't you? All right, I'll show you. You're a cheap, lousy, dirty, stinking mug! And I'm glad what I've done to you!
No! Why not? Do! Or do not. There is no try. Is that a challenge?
Temper.
I wouldn't dream of challenging you.
All right, so Beetlejuice. I got a new way that I'm wanting to do these reviews. I saw an article not too long ago on the website Medium where it lays out 10 important things to look at when doing a movie review, and I think it was a great article. When I find it, I will put it in the description of this video so that you can take a look at that as well. Maybe it'll help enhance how you view movies. But these reviews are going to go through that step by step. And with each segment, so there's 10, and with each segment, I will give a rating from 1 to 10 on that particular thing. At the end, we'll tally it all up, and we will get the average rating for that movie. And we'll see how close we get. So, the first thing I want to do, though, is discuss the synopsis for this movie. It has been over 30 years since Lydia and the ghost with the most have seen each other. Lydia is now dealing with her own rebellious daughter. If you recall, in the original, she was the rebellious one. And she's been seeing and hearing things she hasn't for a while. Meanwhile, she's confronted with loss after loss in her own life. And while her life feels like it's unraveling, so does the other realm. So there's a lot of chaos, a lot of things that are happening here, and the question's going to be, will chaos win out, or is there hope for Lydia and her family? So I want to go down the line here. First, let's talk about cast and crew for this movie. The director is Tim Burton. I think we all know Tim Burton. He did the original Beetlejuice. He's done Batman, the 1989 version with Michael Keaton. He did Batman Returns, the follow-up to that movie. He's done Nightmare Before Christmas. He's also done Corpse Bride, Big Fish. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. The screenwriters for this are Alfred Goh, and I hope I'm pronouncing this name correct, but it's Miles Miller. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Both of the screenwriters worked on or were the screenwriters for The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. We'll see how that plays out. The composer for this movie, Danny Elfman, who, I find that directors have composers they really enjoy going with. For Steven Spielberg, it's obviously John Williams, as well as for George Lucas in many instances, really for a lot of people. But for Tim Burton, that go-to composer is Danny Elfman. And Danny Elfman is nothing but absolute brilliant. Known for the original Beetlejuice, obviously, and I believe, it would surprise me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe he also did the animated version of Beetlejuice. Shout out to that show. I grew up with that. I watched it on Nickelodeon all of the time. It was a fantastic show. It was a great cartoon. I believe he did the music for that. He also did the music for Batman, the 1989 version, with Michael Keaton, who we will talk about in just a second. And he did the music for the animated series as well. He also did the music for Nightmare Before Christmas. And I do believe he did the music for Corpse Bride. It would surprise me if I was wrong on that one too. The director of photography, I'm sure I'm going to butcher this one, is Harris Zamberlokos, who is known for Mamma Mia, Thor, Murder on the Orient. So some big name movies right there. Talking about the cast, we have obviously returning to reprise his role, Michael Keaton, also known, and as I'm reading this cast list off here, which, by the way, I have my notes per usual. As I'm reading the cast list off here, I'm going to try to give some shout outs to maybe some of the lesser known films that these actors and actresses are known for. So for Michael Keaton, Obviously, Batman, that's one of the bigger ones. But Multiplicity, if you haven't seen that movie, you definitely should. It's an amazing comedy done by Harold Ramis. It's comedy gold. It's Michael Keaton at his best. So give that a watch if you haven't seen that. Much Ado About Nothing. I think people don't equate Michael Keaton with Shakespeare, and let me tell you something. Regardless of your thoughts on that movie, if you have seen it, Michael Keaton in that is brilliant, and you also see glimpses in that movie the way he's acting to, in all honesty, Beetlejuice. So very interesting. We obviously have Winona Ryder returning for her role as Lydia, known for Little Women, Bram Stoker's Dracula. Great Dracula movie if you haven't seen that. With the iconic Gary Oldman playing Dracula. You have Anthony Hopkins playing Van Helsing. Just a fantastic movie. Also had Keanu Reeves in it. Believe it or not, those all go well together. That movie was very, very good. And as we're approaching spooky season, if you want a recommendation, that would be a good one. As is this next show that Winona Ryder is in, that I am sure every one of you are going to know the minute that I say it. You probably already know what I'm going to say, and that is Stranger Things. Stranger Things has been absolutely incredible the past few seasons. And every time that I say it can't get better, it does. It proves me wrong every time. So I'm really looking forward to this final one that's getting ready to come out before too long. Then we have Jenna Ortega. Jenna Ortega is known for her role in Wednesday as well as Scream 6. Jenna Ortega, I definitely think, has a very, very, very bright future ahead of her, and I'm looking forward to seeing what she ends up going on to do for sure. Catherine O'Hara. I don't know what we did to deserve Catherine O'Hara, but I'm glad that we got her. She is an absolutely incredible actress. She's hilarious. She plays the quirky part perfect every single time. She knows how to do serious well. She's a phenomenal actress. She knows the assignment. She knows the assignment every single time. So, movies she's known for: Home Alone, obviously, Kevin McAllister's mom, great role there. Watching her and John Candy in that movie is just fantastic. I love it. She's also known for A Mighty Wind, as well as the other Christopher Guest films, Best in Show. I believe she's also in Waiting for Guffman. If you have not seen those are very mockumentary comedy style. And to me, incredibly hysterical and well done. So if you like that kind of comedy, and that dry comedy, I think you'd really, really enjoy those movies. So, and if you like Catherine O'Hara and you want to see some things that you might not have seen her in before, I recommend those. And then obviously Schitt's Creek, another big one. Big show that she's in with Eugene Levy. So, pardon my voice. It's been going in and out. Not sure what's going on there, but we'll get through it. Justin Theroux. He says Theroux, his uncle mentioned during Mosquito Coast that Justin has been saying the name wrong for a while now, that it's a French name, and instead of Theroux, it is pronounced Theroux. So, Theroux, we know who I'm talking about. He obviously is known for Mosquito Coast. I just got done talking about that, as well as voicing the Tramp in Lady and the Tramp, the live-action version. This is somebody I'm really hoping continues to get a lot of attention. I think that he's very strong in drama performances, especially. In this, he has more of a quirky character, which is fine. I think, though, where he really shines is in drama. And I hope I see him in some bigger roles, because I would not be surprised if given the chance that he could easily win an Academy Award for a performance before too long. Let's talk about the numbers for a minute. I'm a data guy. Those of you who know me know that. My day job is looking and analyzing data. So let's talk about this movie and look at it by the numbers. In terms of its domestic box office, currently, it's sitting at $187.8 million. By the time you see this, it's probably going to be more. For the last 2 weekends, I think it's been number one at the box office, and it is currently the 9th movie in terms of the domestic box office take for 2024. Could go a little bit higher than that. So internationally, it has made $76.5 million, and that brings its worldwide box office numbers to $264.3 million, which currently puts it at 17th worldwide this year at the box office. The budget for this movie was it's estimated to have been $100 million. I don't know that that's confirmed, but if it was $100 million, they did exceptionally well already, and it hasn't been out too long. So, the first film, to put this in perspective, in 1988, the domestic box office was $74.5 million. Worldwide, $75.1 million. So obviously, international didn't play too big of a role back in 1988 on this movie. So, where does that put the box office this year? It currently sits at about $5.99 billion. 2023, its total box office, the total box office number for the year 2023, last year, $8.95 billion. So we're currently sitting at about 67% of what the total box office was last year. Now, we do have some other bigger movies that are going to be set to come out later this year. I know that Disney's probably, and me personally, I'm hoping that Mufasa is really, really good and does really, really well. Moana 2, I think, is going to be a big box office pull and that's the second Disney. And then I think you've also got Wicked, and I think Wicked will be, every single time I see that trailer, it gives me chills. So, I think that we're going to get something very special from Wicked. I really do. If not, I'm going to be fairly disappointed. But I'll be on here to tell you what I thought without spoiling it. So that is the box office. And that finally leads us to portion number 1, or point 1 to consider out of 10 for our rating. And that is the plot of this movie. So let's dive in. The story for this movie definitely seems plausible for the universe. So I give it that. You can't, and I want to be clear on this, you cannot detract points from this movie because it's weird. Anybody that does that clearly did not see the first movie, or you don't remember it, and you need to go back and you need to watch it, and you need to think about what that would have been like to watch for the first time in 1988. It would have been exceptionally weird. You've got the Maitlands that are taking their face and stretching it out, reaching into their eye cavities and putting eyeballs on their fingers. It was exceptionally weird. You've got snake, essentially snake juice reference, Parks and Rec, I guess, but snake Beetlejuice forming from the arm of the steps. The entire dinner sequence with shrimp stretching up out of the bowls and grabbing them by the faces. It was an exceptionally weird movie. So you cannot detract points from the second one for being weird. If it wasn't weird, then they have done something horribly wrong. So I want to be clear on that point. It should be weird. It should be grotesque. We're talking about Beetlejuice here. So that being said, I think the structure, that's where it comes up short. And I want to make it clear on why I think that. This movie, it seemed everywhere, and at times completely chaotic. And I know what that sounds like. Believe me, I know. We're talking about Beetlejuice. I just got done saying it's supposed to be weird. It's supposed to be chaotic. This was too chaotic even by Beetlejuice standards. It just felt choppy, which probably had a little bit to do with editing, which we will get into a little bit later. But right now, for the plot, I even think that the plot and the writing felt very choppy. And I want to be clear on what I mean by that. There's a story within this movie about Astrid and her mom, Lydia. But then there's also a story about her mom and her boyfriend. Then there's a story between mom and mom. And then there's a story between Beetlejuice and mom, which it makes complete sense, especially seeing the first one. And then there's another story and another story. And we've got, you see what I'm saying? There's too many things to resolve, and there's no way to do that with the amount of time that you're given. And because you can't properly resolve them, it gets the audience in a place, it gets the writers in a place to where they have to resolve something quickly, and that puts the audience in a position to feel like it's been sloppily done. I don't even know if that's a word, but like it's sloppy. It feels sloppy. So there's too much. It's just too much going on. So for plot, that particular point out of 10, I give this movie a 6. I think it nailed the weird piece to it. I think that it nailed the grotesque to it, but it ultimately, it was everywhere. And it was really kind of tough to keep up at times. And I'll continue to get into why on that. I'm not going to sit here, by the way, and drop any spoilers. But it's just, it's chaotic. Put it that way. So that leads us into the second thing. And that is talking about the attractiveness or the attraction of this movie. So let's talk about theme, because that relates to this particular portion. And what I will say is the same thing I just said about plot. When the theme shows up, I think it's super interesting and it's super compelling, and they're dancing all around it. And I think it It had the ability to be beautiful. In a way, I think this movie really kind of discusses grief and essentially how grief in its own way, if we don't release that, it becomes a ghost and it haunts us until we figure out a way to release that grief. So, I think they tiptoed all around that. And at times I think they hit it dead on, but then we spiraled into some other story and I end up confused. Additionally, I think it's really, really fun watching Lydia be a mom and how she relates to her daughter, Astrid, who is a lot like her when she was younger. So I think that's a really fun dynamic to explore in this movie. It's extremely entertaining, the movie in and of itself. It has scenes of suspense. It has scenes that are thrilling. And then it has scenes that are downright cringeworthy, I feel like. There's something around every corner in this movie. And I think it helps it, but I think at times it also hurts it. And so all of that in relation to the attractiveness of the movie. Ultimately I would say I would give this probably a 7 out of 10 on the attractiveness scale. And part of that attractiveness is theme, but we're going to dive specifically into theme. That's another one of our points. So, number 3, theme. I honestly could not tell you with 100% certainty what the theme of this movie is. And I hate that. I have my thoughts. I already talked about the grief part, potentially that theme, how we deal with things, the importance of family, but I couldn't tell you what the specific theme of this movie is. At the very least, there should be something, a glimpse of, a steady theme. And I don't know that there's anything steady. That being said, it is a Beetlejuice movie. So, maybe they weren't shooting for depth. And that's okay. That's okay. I think all this that I've heard in the past about popcorn movies or amusement parks, I think this movie is the prime example of that. I get it. This felt like that. So, in terms of theme, that area, the fact that I couldn't tell you what it would be, I give this a 4. I give theme a 4 out of 10. It really wasn't present. And that leads into acting. I think it's absolutely no surprise what I'm going to say about the acting. Every single one of them stuck the landing. Every single one of them. They understood the assignment. They nailed it. Michael Keaton absolutely still has it, as does Winona Ryder. In fact, it seems like Winona Ryder never even stopped playing Lydia, that she just picked up where she left off. And there's something incredible about that. And it really, I think, kind of speaks to how much Lydia is like Winona Ryder in real life, in many instances. Catherine O'Hara, I've already spoken about Catherine O'Hara. Nobody does quirky like Catherine O'Hara. No one. Absolutely no one. And it is no different in this movie. Her little quips, the little jabs here and there, she's just perfect. Jenna Ortega knocks it out of the park. I want to talk about her counterpart, though. Arthur Conti, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. This is somebody who I feel fairly confident saying this, that we're going to see a lot more of. And I apologize if I don't know off the top of my head anything else he's been in. It would not surprise me that he's been in some other bigger things, that's for sure. This guy's a natural, and I think he's going to go a very, very long way. So keep your eyes on her counterpart for sure in this movie. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Monica Bellucci and Willem Dafoe in this movie. Monica Bellucci brings this really good, dark, negative, looming mentality, dramatic feel to her character. Essentially doom. And she does a really, really good job at doing it. I gotta say, just the way that she carries herself in this, not enough is said about actors that understand the assignment just off of body language, because you can tell a lot in acting just by your body language without having to say a word. So I think Monica Bellucci does a really good job of that in this movie. Willem Dafoe is Willem Dafoe. There's not enough that I can even begin to say about Willem Dafoe. The man is a legend. If if I was to sit here and rattle off everything I don't even know if I could remember every single film that I've loved him in. Anything Wes Anderson, for sure. I need to do a Wes Anderson review or just top 10 list at some point. His role as Klaus in Life Aquatic might be one of my favorite things I've ever witnessed in my life. Norman Osborn in the Spider-Man movies, he is the Green Goblin. He always will be the Green Goblin. I think he nailed that. Boondock Saints, crushed that one. So, if you haven't seen a lot of Willem Dafoe movies, do yourself a favor, go through his list of movies, just pick one. Just pick one. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be impressive every time. So, this is no different. He nails this. So, for acting, for that one out of 10, I give it a 10. Not enough can be said about the acting. I think it was incredible. So, that's how I felt on that particular point. That leads us to dialogue. For the most part, the dialogue in this movie was pretty good. That being said, there were a couple of scenes in this movie that made absolutely no sense. There's one scene in particular, and I'm not going to go into the full details of it, but I will say, and if you don't want to hear this, skip forward a little bit. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but there is one scene in this movie in particular where the entire language shifts. Like it's not even in English, which would be, it would be fine, but the way in which it's set up and what happens during the action of it, and they do, obviously they're providing the subtitles, and, you can follow with what's happening, but just in general, the way in which things are happening, I didn't really know what to think, if I'm being honest. I found myself laughing at the scene, but here's the thing. I couldn't figure out, and I mean this sincerely, I couldn't figure out if I actually found the scene funny, or if I found it moronic, or if I just legitimately was embarrassed for the actors in the scene. And I didn't really know how else to respond. I kind of just sat there like in my head thinking, I think this is supposed to be funny. And I kind of get the quirkiness of it. But does anybody else feel like they're about to blow this entire movie? And so it was kind of a nervous kind of laughter. And, there should not be a scene that does that makes you feel that. Because what that does, unfortunately, and this is kind of a common thread that's showing up in this review, what that does is it jolts the audience from the experience of the movie and of the story. It jolts them out of the story back into just being an audience member and wondering what they're doing. That's a disconnect. Now, here's the deal. I award points absolutely 1,000% for taking chances in movies. Really, I do. But I think this one was a miss. And sometimes the whole point of taking a chance is that it could go wrong. It's a risk. And for me, personally, this scene went very, very wrong. So, dialogue out of 10, that knocked it down to a 7. Just really honestly, that scene, maybe one or two other small things in the dialogue portion, but that one in particular. So that leads us into the 6th point, which is cinematography. There were some absolutely gorgeous shots in this movie, some great sequences. The wardrobe was incredible. Here's the thing, though, about Tim Burton that you never have to worry about. You're never going to have to worry about wardrobe. You're never going to have to worry about set design. He has his own fingerprint in every one of his movies. All you got to, as soon as you watch one of his movies, you know it's him. You know without having to spend much time, maybe 30 seconds or less probably. You know it's him. Sometimes the cuts felt a little quick, so a little bit jerky. That's kind of minor, but that is something that can also assist in that chaotic feel that I've alluded to already a couple times. So that only helps pile on that kind of jumbled mess feeling, or just sloppiness. Lighting was wonderful. And I think it definitely helped draw me in further to a lot of these scenes. It helped put me in that scene, I think. And I got to tell you, there are some shots in this movie that might as well, I spoke about this at the very beginning of this review. And I'm going to continue speaking about it because I think there's a good or fair number of you out there like me that grew up watching the animated show. There are, if you did grow up watching that and you loved it as much as I did, there are some shots in this movie that are absolute love letters to shots in that animated show. So I think that will definitely intrigue you about this movie for sure. So ultimately, cinematography out of 10, I give it an 8. It did what it needed to do. There were some jerky kind of moments here and there, but ultimately, it's Tim Burton, being Tim Burton. Wardrobe, set design, lighting, all that stuff. It was all great. There were some great shots in it. And that leads into editing. First, let's talk about the visual effects, because this is another Tim Burton staple. This movie makes use of something that I think really makes the first Beetlejuice truly special, and that's stop motion animation. This movie went back to that. There was one instance, I think, of it being used that really kind of felt just kind of out of place, out of left field, almost too... It was almost like we were having to... You remember me speaking about what happens when you have multiple stories playing out at once? It leaves the writer to have to tie up loose ends with maybe one line of dialogue or a couple lines max. This particular portion kind of did that. And you'll know it when you see it. I'm not going to talk about it, but it does involve stop motion. And I did feel like it was very rushed, and they were just trying to catch everybody up, or tie up a loose end, essentially. So that's what I'll say about that particular part. But outside of that, there's some really, really good, beautiful use of stop motion, just like in the first one. So absolutely love that they did that. The visual effects were just great. It made it feel like I'd picked up where I left off with the original, just 30 plus years later. Pace on this, remember we're talking about editing. Pace, completely different story. Like I said before, this film actually did feel like an amusement park. And in fact, it felt like an amusement park ride. And what I mean by that is it would rev into high gear just to jerk you back another direction for a quick turn, and then rev into high gear again, and then jerk you back in the opposite direction. Now, sometimes that's fun. Sometimes that works out. But sometimes that causes whiplash. And I'm not quite sure where this movie falls on that spectrum. I lean a little bit towards the whiplash side of it. So, I again, it goes back to that herky-jerky feeling that the plot kind of gave us, that the storyline kind of put out. And you're literally seeing, I'm on the 7th point here, which is editing. You're literally seeing each one of these points in some way where the chaoticness is playing a factor. I mean, I've talked about it in editing. I talked about it in dialogue. Let's just go back here for just a second. I talked about it in theme. I couldn't even really 100% state what the theme is. I talked about it on attraction. And of course, I talked about it on plot. And I think it all kind of begins there. It begins with the writing, and it begins with that plot. So I think the editing is just another piece where that happened, and it's unfortunate. That being said, like I said, visual effects, beautiful. For editing, I'd give it a 7. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Ultimately, I do think the herky-jerkiness of it didn't get completely to a point to where I was like, I'm going to have to leave, which is awesome. I'm glad it didn't get to that level, but it was bothersome. So that's a 7 out of 10 on editing. Now, soundtrack. I don't need to say anything about soundtrack, to be honest, and nor do I think I would have all of the words to describe how masterful Danny Elfman is as a composer. I don't think I could put it in words. From Nightmare on Elm Street. Wow. From Nightmare Before Christmas to Corpse Bride to the first Beetlejuice to Batman to this Beetlejuice, Danny Elfman does not miss. Period. He's never going to miss. And that's because of the amount of care and attention he puts into his craft. And you can absolutely, in some ways, I guess you can see it when it's inside of a movie or in particularly a movie scene. But you can also hear it. You just hear it. And it's gorgeous. Every composition by Danny Elfman's gorgeous. This movie is absolutely no different. He does an incredible job on the composition. So for me, the soundtrack out of 10, it gets a 10. And that leads us to director. I don't think anybody can argue, in my opinion, that Tim Burton has a style like no one else. It's extremely special. I'm not sure that this movie lived up to the first. There were multiple times where things felt aimless. Instances where, scenes even kind of overstayed their welcome. Things were drug out a little bit too long. To the point to where, okay, that was funny. Now it's just kind of, going a little long. It's overstayed the welcome, essentially. And then there's times, and I've already said this, there were times where I had absolutely no idea what was happening. See my reference earlier in this review to the language change in a scene and the jerkiness of that. And I'm going to state this. There's a character in the movie, and it's a little character, that I don't know why it needed to exist. It didn't make much sense to me, to be honest. I'm sure there's a chance I missed the point, but you'll know when you see it. I'll be interested in your thoughts, but it's a little character. I don't know why it needed to even be in the movie. It did not make any sense to me, nor did I really even find it funny. I think it played into the grotesque really well, which you kind of have to check that box, and I get that. But you can't check the box just to check the box. Like, there has to be a purpose for each sequence. And I think the sequences with this little character did not make sense. Didn't make sense. So, nor did it really progress the story. In fact, it kind of tossed it into another field, which I was kind of used to at this point with this particular movie. So, in short, I was left dazzled by some scenes and sequences, confused by others. I do appreciate that he didn't just blatantly carbon copy sequences from the first film to pay fan service, essentially, but that he did pay homage, which there's a difference. If he had have carbon copied a lot of the sequences from the original, at that point, it could have been just a commercial for Beetlejuice, the first one. Paying homage, you're at least acknowledging some key things. And I'm not going to say what, but some key things that will get that nostalgia going, while also being able to make this film your own. So, there's that. And I do give him credit there. Ultimately, out of 10, though, I don't know that I've ever been able to really say this about a Tim Burton movie or Tim Burton as a director. But out of 10, I got to give him a 6. At the end of the day, I think that the director is really kind of in charge of all of it and needs to have control of each individual piece, each of the things that we've talked about, from soundtrack to editing to the writing to the pace to the theme, all of it. And I honestly believe that he absolutely missed the mark. I think he was trying to do too much. I think this could have been really, really something special based on the way that he did this movie if it was given a series. But you tried to squeeze too much in. So, if that makes sense. Last, number 10 out of these points is just the it factor. Is this something original? Is it something new? I think the story in general of Beetlejuice is always going to be a true original, directly out of the mind of Tim Burton. So in that sense, yes, I think the story is a true original. And regardless of any flaws, I'm quite certain I would find myself going back to it movie after movie if they made them. But there's nothing incredibly pioneering to me about this installment. Nothing that jumps out as, wow, that's new. I haven't seen that done before. Which I feel like you do get a little bit of in that first one. There's nothing that really sets it apart. There's nothing that really sets it apart. But here's what I'm going to say. If you need something to satisfy the weird, grotesque, quirky horror craving, then if that's what you're shooting for, this film is absolutely for you. Was it a good time? It absolutely was a good time. It was a roller coaster. It was a lot of fun. Had a lot of ups, downs, twists, turns. So in that sense, if that was what it set out to do, then I think mission accomplished. in terms of, did I walk away from it reflecting on anything in my own life? Not really. Did I walk away from it reflecting on any form of a theme? No. Do I think that it's going to win an Academy Award? Probably not. But I don't know that that's what it really set out to do. I think that this was about paying homage to those that love the original. It's kind of a thank you for your love of that story. And then I think it was about connecting that generation's children to the story as well. And giving parents something that they can share in with their kids. This channel's never really going to be me telling you whether or not to take your kids to a movie, by the way. I think that that's up to you as the parent. You make that decision, and that's why ratings exist. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you whether or not you should take your kids. I think that's something that you have to judge for yourself. There are dark sequences, there are scary moments, there are very grotesque moments. So proceed with caution, I guess. But I'm not going to tell you one way or the other what to do. So, but with that said, I will tell you what my final rating is on this, and I think in order to fully understand that, we're going to have to go back through each individual list. And I think maybe I will put them down the line right over here. But first, before I do that, let me tell you what others have been giving it. IMDb currently has this movie at a 7.1. Rotten Tomatoes, pretty close to that, gives it a 77%. The audience score, also found on Rotten Tomatoes website, gives it an 81%. And now, if we're going down my list, I gave plot a 6. I gave attraction a 7. I gave theme a 4. I gave acting a 10. I gave dialogue a 7. I gave cinematography an 8. I gave editing a 7. I gave soundtrack a 10. I gave director a 6. And I gave it factor a 5. So you add up those 10 components. Here's how we're going to do this. And probably how I'm going to do this going forward, because I think that's really helpful and a great way to look at it. So we add up those 10 things right over here. And we divide it by 10 to get an average. And that gives us a 7.0. So a 7 out of 10 from me. I think it was a fun movie. I think if you enjoyed the first one, you're going to have fun with this one. Again, I'm a little taken aback at the fact that the story was as jerky as it was. I don't really understand why. I don't really know what to tell you on that front. If you're wanting a movie that checks all the Beetlejuice boxes and that's it, I think you're going to get that. I think you're absolutely going to get that. But if you're looking for something that's going to have a concrete storyline, with a theme to it, I don't know that necessarily you're going to get that. Obviously at the surface level, there is a storyline like there would be for any movie, but outside of that, I don't know that you're going to get it. So, maybe leave some comments below. Let me know what you think. This is an interesting one for me. I honestly kind of expected higher. So, but a 7 out of 10, it's still good, still a good movie, and still fun to see. So, take that for what it's worth. As always, I will start ending probably all of my video segments, whether it be First Watch or Cineversary, which I am going to get back to those. I do want to do more of those. Right now, there's Jaws and Batman. That's before we had the mic, so forgive any audio instances there. And continue to give me a little grace here. This is all new. But I am enjoying getting to do these and sharing my thoughts with you. Ultimately, to be honest, it's just nice to kind of go back and rewatch some of these and see what I thought and listen in to my own notes on this. So I think it's rewarding in a lot of ways. But anyway, I do eventually want to do more of those Cineversaries as well as some other segments, including top 10s. I've been telling you about a top 10 Disney list. It's coming. I promise it's coming. And then just some other segments that I do have in the back of my mind, but I want to get them fully fleshed out first. So I'll probably generally try to end with these two reminders. If you take two things from me, that would be, number one, get back to the theater. I cannot stress how important it is to support your local theater, whether that be a smaller non-franchise theater, or if it's just the local AMC or Regal. Get out there and support your theaters. They're incredibly important. It allows us to continue showcasing movies the way in which the artist, the director, the actors, all of them intended you to see it. It's incredibly important. So continue to get out there, support the art form, get to your local theaters. And this is a good movie to see in a theater. I think that did provide a fun element with that extra sound, the bigger screen. Just continue to support them. The second piece, which we did not really discuss, but I will continue to push, and I will be doing a segment around these, and that is continue to invest in physical media. Continue. Blu-ray, 4K, DVD, heck, VHS. Just continue to invest in physical media because it's incredibly, incredibly important. Physical copy, it's always going to be your copy. You're always going to have it. Streaming might not necessarily be the case. And I'll tell you this, you know what doesn't need time to buffer? A physical disc. You know what tends to give you a better picture consistently? The physical disc. So, continue investing in physical media, invest in the things that you love, and just continue supporting your theaters. And with that, I will bring us to a close. It has been a pleasure, as always. I hope you're enjoying these. They will continue to get better, I promise. As you can tell, I'm investing in the mic. I'm investing in the green screen. I'm invested in this. So, again, I hope you are too. I hope you're enjoying them. Thank you so much for taking the time just to watch this, just to leave a comment. even if it's just saying hi or it's just hitting like. And I especially appreciate shares. Share this out, with other people that that really enjoy movies. Hopefully this provides them some more information about movies that are out currently. And as I start doing other segments, I promise, I will be introducing hopefully facts about movies you have not heard of before. And if you're craving that, go check out the Jaws Cineversary and the 1989 Batman Cineversary, because you don't want to miss those. There are good facts in there. So, thank you again, and until next time, keep supporting your theaters.